here in Mitte, in the center of Berlin, with Holger Hiller, who's a personal hero of mine, and I want to do a thing called Biography of a Song, in which we simply look from lots of different angles at one particular song. And I was thinking today that I hate CDs. I was trying to find Oben, which is the European release of this album, Hyperprism, came out in 1986, on which Oben, the song, appears, and I couldn't find it amongst the dust and spiderwebs of my apartment, my CD collection. But I was thinking that the important thing is that a song gets recorded inside your head. It becomes completely a part of you, and this song, Oben, is very much in my head. I'm the recording medium, the second recording medium. So let's listen now to what Holger has to say about the first recording medium and the composition of this song.
Der Holzsteig ist unten, 4 Menschen.
Right, I mean the basic recording wasn't even done in the studio. It was programmed before we went to the studio, which at that time was very unusual to program something.
Right.
I mean, you have to understand, I mean, this was in the early 80s, around 1985? 85, 86 this was released, and it was programmed on a so-called emulator, which was a sampler.
An emulator 1?
No, emulator 2.
Emulator 2, right.
Yeah, emulator 1 was not good quality and also amazingly expensive. So this was the time when they just came down in price. Now when I say came down in price, the emulator 2 at the time, I bought it for 30,000 marks, which would be now 15,000 euro. That was a lot of money. I actually had to get a loan from the bank from that.
That's fascinating. I also used an emulator 2 on my first album in 1985, but we rented it. But I read that in interviews that you had to rent, first of all, the first emulator you used was rented, not bought.
Yeah, the first emulator I used belonged to a group called Der Plan, based in Düsseldorf. They were a Neue Deutsche Welle group.
So they lent you asked them to borrow their emulator?
So that was my first stop. And then I moved to London, and so I had to buy one. At least that's what I thought.
So you went to the bank and you said, can I have a loan of several thousand pounds? Consumer loan to buy a musical instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big decision, obviously.
Yeah, it was a big decision. It turned out to be a good investment, actually.
Right. Because you made several albums with that same.
Yeah, and I rented it out in London.
Maybe I rented yours.
Well, I was always with the emulator programming.
You programmed it with the artist?
Yeah, I mean, people didn't really know how to do that at the time. And also, you have to say that, you know, it was basically a keyboard, big keyboard, and then the actual computer part was actually this big. It was a display this big with 2 lines, and there you had to type in. I wouldn't be able to do it now. I mean, I don't know how we did it, to be honest. But okay, back to Oben.
Well, it has a lot of emulator sounds on it. Did you use mostly the pre-programmed sounds, or did you make your own samples, or a mixture of the two?
I never used the pre-programmed sounds because I thought they were awful. The idea of the people who developed these instruments was to imitate orchestras.
Yeah.
And
but in a strangely stilted and inadequate way.
Yeah, I mean, there was an awful air of exclusivity about these instruments. I remember that in London, I had to go to this place, I forgot what it's called. There was only one place in London that would deal with electronic equipment, and that's where, you know, people like, sorry, what's the drummer? You know, it's coming in the air tonight.
Oh, Phil Collins.
Phil Collins and people like that used to buy the equipment, so it was like all very, very pretentious and stuff. And it was totally not what I wanted to do with these instruments, so I always got a bit annoyed, and they always wanted to sell me these presets and these.
But the Emulator 2 used the same sample library as the Fairlight, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It was a Fairlight, and then they looked a little bit down on the people who couldn't afford a Fairlight.
Yeah, it was like a cheap, but poor man's Fairlight.
Poor man's Fairlight, but obviously. Well, I mean, now that goes without saying, because now everybody uses sample differently. But at that time, it was basically unheard of that people would use it to basically steal other people's music.
Ah. But on the track Oben im Eck, there is no, as far as I can hear, there's no actual sampling in terms of phrases from other people's music. There's a harp sound, which I think is a standard. It sounds like a standard preset Emulator 2 harp sound.
No, none of these are standard sounds, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I didn't sample any phrases or bits of music. What I did with this was I used the arpeggiator.
Because the chords are very beautifully broken up. They're not just
Right.
a strum. It's like a harp which is being arranged in different arpeggios, yes. But it's an electronic arpeggiation.
That's right. So basically what an arpeggiator does is you're supposed to play chords like C major, G major, the standard chords, and then it's supposed to aid you to make that like But I used it in a different way, because at that time I was interested in what you would call nowadays algorithmic composing, which I mean there were people who did that, but they were not really available through the internet, or like now you can look it up at Wikipedia, yeah. But at that time,
how would you define it briefly? Algorithmic composing.
Well, basically, it's a form of composing where the computer makes decisions for you, and based on certain rules, and you then choose the bits you like.
You alter the rules and you experiment with listening to what the computer does purely algorithmically, and because each chord is treated differently in that song. It seems to have a different arpeggiation on each chord.
Right. So let me explain.
Okay.
It's algorithmic in the sense that it's basically a what do you call it? A chance. I'm applying chance to the arpeggios,
Right.
meaning I basically put my fingers down, in any way, purely a chance way. That's what I did. Then I listened back to it, and by listening back to it, interpreted what the computer did in a human way. So
Right.
the computer would go. Yeah.
But the computer was not choosing the chords. You chose the chords.
No, I wasn't choosing the chords. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying this is a composition based on chance.
Oh wow! So you erased the chords you didn't like and just kept the ones you did, or
No. What I did is I put my fingers onto the keyboard in an arbitrary way.
sort of random, right?
Random. Do you say random or arbitrary?
Yeah, arbitrary, yeah.
Arbitrary way, and obviously, when I did that, the keyboard wasn't going like, you know, like playing all the chord at the same time.
Yeah.
It was arpeggiating, so it would go, you know, when I put it down, it would go doom, boom, boom, boom,
Right.
ding. Then it would reverse direction, gung, gung, gung. By that time, I would have already done a different chord.
So you were recording this live as you played.
And recorded it onto tape.
Yeah.
So.
And you would drop in and change chords here and there.
No.
And compose on the tape.
No, as I said, it was based on chance.
Pure chance. So the rules were don't stop recording.
Don't stop recording. Record the arpeggios of the computer.
Wow, that's interesting. So it's really
based on chance.
It's an aleatory composition like John Cage. Yes.
That's right.
Right.